You ever feel like you're just drowning in information? Like you want to stay informed, understand the big picture, but there's just never enough time to read all those reports, all that research.
Absolutely. It's overwhelming.
Well, that's kind of where we come in. Welcome to the deep dive. We take those really dense sources, the ones piling up on your virtual desk, and we pull out the crucial bits, the stuff that really matters.
Exactly. Think of it like your personal intel briefing on a topic you really need to understand. And today, we're diving deep into something that's, genuinely transformative. The platform business model.
Right, not just a buzzword.
No, it's way more than that. It's a fundamental shift in how value gets created, how it gets exchanged, a whole new way of doing business.
And for this deep dive, we've got this really interesting document. It's titled Platform, AREHOWNET, WORKED, MARKETSTRAN, Revolution.pdf. Mouthful, I know, and also your notes from today.
Yeah, got those right here.
So our mission today is pretty straightforward. Let's unpack the real power behind these platforms. How are they shaking up industries? And, let's pull out some surprising facts, those aha moments for everyone listening. Okay, platforms. They're everywhere. Where's a good starting point to even, get a handle on this?
Well, often the best way to grasp a really big idea is to look at its origins. And in the platform world, the story of Airbnb is particularly good. It really captures the essence of how many of these things start.
Ah, yes. The classic San Francisco rent problem story. Tell us about it.
Okay, so picture this. San Francisco, 2007. You've got two designers, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia. And like many people there, they're struggling with the rent. It's just getting higher and higher.
Story as old as time in SF.
Exactly. Then this big design conference, the IC It's World Congress, is coming to town. Huge event. Draws tons of people. Hotels. Totally book out. We're crazy expensive.
Right. Classic conference suite.
So inspiration hits. Chesky and Gebbia think, hey, we've got this loft space. They decide to offer air mattresses, plus maybe some local tours, get people to the inside scoop. They actually market it, quite cheekily, as networking in your jams.
Networking in your jams. I love that. That's brilliant. So did this little pop-up B&B actually work?
It totally did. They got 3 guests that weekend, made $1,000.
Wow, covered the rent.
But, and this is the crucial part, they realized something bigger. It wasn't just about this one conference weekend. They started thinking, maybe there's a much broader demand for this kind of thing. Unique places to stay, often more affordable year-round, not just when there's a big event.
Ah, the light bulb moment.
Exactly. That realization, that spark, that understanding of the wider potential. That's what led them to actually found Airbnb.
And the scale now is just mind-boggling. Just remind us, what kind of numbers are we talking about from the document?
All right, so by April 2014, remember, this is still relatively early days, Airbnb was already active in 119 countries. Over 500,000 listings. Think about that. Variety, spare rooms, apartments, villas, even castles, I think.
Incredible range.
And they'd served over 10 million guests by that point. Valuation, already north of $10 billion.
$10 billion, back in 2014.
Yeah, putting them right up there, valuation-wise, with some of the biggest, most established hotel chains in the world. And they did it in just a few years.
That's just astonishing growth. So, beyond the cool story, what's the key lesson here for understanding platforms?
The core insight, I think, is the power of unlocking fragmented supply, or maybe spare capacity. Think about all the underused assets out there. Spare rooms, obviously, cars sitting idle most of the day, even people's skills or time.
Right, things that aren't being fully utilized.
Exactly. Platforms are brilliant at connecting that dormant supply with people who actually have a demand for it. They unlock value that was just sitting there, inaccessible or super inefficient to find before.
Okay, so Airbnb showed how powerful that is in travel. But this isn't just a travel thing, is it? The document makes it clear this is hitting, all sorts of work.
Oh, absolutely. It's way broader. Take the story of James Irwin. This guy was writing software manuals. Okay, job, I guess. But he was also kind of a history buff.
Okay.
So on Reddit, the big online forum platform, someone posts this hypothetical question. What if a modern U.S. Marine unit somehow got transported back in time to fight the Roman Empire?
Classic internet hypothetical.
Right. But Irwin writes this incredibly detailed, imaginative response, really thought it through, and it just exploded on Reddit. Went totally viral within that community. People loved it.
So it got a lot of upvotes.
Tons. So much buzz, in fact, that it actually led to a Hollywood movie deal.
No way. Seriously, from a Reddit post.
Seriously, software manual writer to movie deal, all because of a platform like Reddit connecting him with an audience and generating that visibility.
Wow. Okay, that really drives home the unexpected ways these platforms can create opportunities. It's not just about finding a room.
Not at all. And the document argues this isn't just for creatives either. It suggests platform models are going to reshape how all kinds of work gets done. Think tutors, lawyers, photographers, maybe even scientists sharing research data. Platforms create new marketplaces, new connections. They often bypass the old gatekeepers, the traditional structures.
So how are they fundamentally changing the supply side in these different markets? You mentioned unlocking spare capacity.
Yeah, it's a really deep shift. Traditional businesses, right, they often work on just-in-time inventory, try to predict demand, have just enough stock or staff. Think Hertz car rental.
Right. They own the cars, manage the fleet.
Exactly. But platforms, they're moving to what the document calls, quite cleverly, not even mine inventory.
Not even mine inventory. I like that.
Think about relay rides, which became Turo. Instead of owning cars like Hertz, their platform lets you borrow a car from someone who's maybe flying out of town while you're flying in. The platform doesn't own the car. It just connects the owner and the renter.
So the platform is the matchmaker, the facilitator. It orchestrates the connection without actually owning the physical asset.
Precisely. The community, the users, they become the source of supply. It's a total flip. Compare a traditional TV network to YouTube. The network spends millions on studios, cameras, staff, producing a limited number of shows.
Big upfront investment, controlled output.
YouTube, totally different model, vastly bigger library, way more diverse. Why? Because the users create the content.
So it benefits the creators, they get an audience, and the viewers, they get way more choice.
Exactly. But it definitely shakes things up for the traditional TV networks, doesn't it? Creates huge challenges for them.
No kidding. And the document also says marketing is getting flipped on its head, too.
It really is. There's a quote in there, I think, from the CIO of Coca-Cola. Observing how we talk about reaching people has totally changed. It went from broadcast, just blasting a message out,
One to many.
to segmentation, targeting specific groups. And now, it's all about virality and social influence.
So the message spreads through people, not just from the company down.
Exactly. The power dynamic has inverted. Messages used to be pushed out by companies. Now they're often pulled through and spread by consumers themselves, organically, on social platforms.
So the users become the marketing engine, in a way. The platform just provides the environment for that to happen.
You got it. And just to hammer home how widespread this is, the document lists a whole bunch of industries being transformed. We're talking local services, think Yelp.
Reviews, finding businesses.
Logistics and delivery companies like Munchery, though that specific one had its struggles. Even old school manufacturers like Hair are getting into platform models. Media, obviously Medium, YouTube, operating systems, iOS, Android, they're platforms for apps. Retail Amazon's marketplace is a huge platform. Transportation Uber, travel Airbnb, it's basically everywhere.
Yeah, it's hard to think of an industry not being touched by this. Okay, so we see how they connect supply and demand, but what's the secret sauce? What gives them that incredible growth, that massive value?
Now we get to the heart of it. Network effects. That's the term you hear constantly, and for good reason. It's a fundamental driver of platform value.
Network effects. Okay, break that down.
Let's use Uber again. Aswaf Damodaran, super respected finance professor, valuation expert. He initially looked at Uber using traditional methods.
Yeah.
Market size, potential cash
That is
flow.
a standard spreadsheet approach.
Right. And he came up with a value around, $5.9 billion. Reasonable, based on that kind of analysis.
Okay, seems solid.
But then you had Bill Gurley, a major venture capitalist, deeply involved in Silicon Valley. He famously argued Uber could be worth like 25 times that.
25 times. Why such a massive difference?
Network effects. Gurley and others like him saw Uber wasn't just a taxi company with an app, it was a matching platform, connecting riders and drivers. And he drew on ideas from economists like W. Brian Arthur about increasing returns. Basically, the more successful you get, the easier it becomes to get even more successful.
So what was the specific network effect Gurley saw in Uber?
It's this beautiful virtuous cycle. Think about it. As more drivers join Uber in a city, what happens?
Shorter wait times for riders, more cars around.
Exactly. Coverage density increases, so riders wait less. They have a better experience. They tell their friends. Maybe some even think, hey, I could drive for Uber too. So rider demand goes up.
Okay, makes sense.
And with more riders requesting trips, what happens for the drivers?
Less time sitting around waiting. More paid trips.
Precisely. Less downtime. Drivers are happier, making more money more consistently.
I see the cycle. More drivers, better rider experience. More riders, better driver experience attracts more drivers.
You got it. It feeds itself. And because drivers have less downtime, Uber can potentially even lower fares slightly, which attracts even more price-sensitive riders, further boosting demand. It's incredibly powerful and self-reinforcing.
Okay, that's a really clear example.
Hal Varian, Google's chief economist, and Carl Shapiro, a business prof, they call this demand economies of scale. It's like the 21st century version of old school economies of scale in manufacturing, but driven by the network, by demand. It creates such a strong advantage that it's super hard for newcomers to compete, almost like a modern monopoly in some ways.
Demand economies of scale, that's a great phrase. So it's not just bigger is better, it's bigger is inherently more valuable for every single user.
Exactly right. Robert Metcalfe, one of the inventors of Ethernet, he came up with Metcalfe's law. Basically says the value of a network grows exponentially, not linearly, with the number of users. More users mean way, way more potential connections, more interactions, more value for everyone.
So the value curve shoots upwards, not just a steady climb.
Steeper and steeper. And crucially, you got to distinguish real network effects from just like price advantages or having a cool brand. Remember the .com boom?
Oh yeah, get big fast, burn rates.
Exactly. So many companies then were obsessed with just acquiring users, throwing money at them, think e-toys, webvan, free PC. But they didn't build the underlying network effects, that self-reinforcing value. So when the money ran out, poof, they collapsed.
Right, just getting users isn't enough. They have to make the platform itself better for other users by being there. So, okay, attracting users is one thing, but what are the actual mechanisms that make these platforms really hum? What creates that value day to day?
Well, one absolute critical thing is what the document calls frictionless entry, making it super easy for people, both producers and consumers, to join and participate.
Frictionless entry, like low barriers.
Extremely low. Think about Threadless, the t-shirt company. They run design contests. Anyone can submit a t-shirt design. Super easy. The community votes. Threadless only actually produces the designs that win, the ones people clearly want.
So they don't have to hire a bunch of designers, and guess what people will like?
Exactly. They tap into this huge pool of designers with almost no upfront cost or commitment. It lets them scale their product line incredibly quickly and efficiently just by making it easy for designers to jump in.
Makes total sense. Easy to join, easy to contribute. But the doc also hints that just growing bigger isn't always better. Scale needs managing.
Oh, absolutely. Scale has to be managed very carefully. Cupid, the dating site, is a fascinating case study in this. Their CEO, Christian Rudder, talked about how as they grew, a weird dynamic emerged.
What happened?
Basically, the male users tended to overwhelmingly message just a small percentage of the female users, the ones deemed most conventionally attractive by the masses.
The classic problem. A few people get all the attention.
Right. So those women got totally swamped with messages, many from guys they weren't interested in. They got frustrated, maybe even left the platform. Meanwhile, the vast majority of guys, crickets, no replies, they got frustrated too.
So bad experience for almost everyone.
Pretty much. Even the desirable guys who might have been good matches lost out because the women they were interested in were overwhelmed or had already left. It shows how the wrong kind of interaction, even if there's a lot of it, can actually degrade the value of the platform for everyone. Scale isn't always good if it's not healthy scale.
That's a really important nuance. So, okay, thinking about healthy interaction, what's the absolute core thing that every successful platform has to facilitate?
At its most fundamental level, it's always about an exchange between producers and consumers. Always.
Producer and consumers, okay.
And that exchange usually involves one or more of three things: information, goods or services, or currency. The platform's job is to provide the infrastructure, the rules, the tools, the marketplace to make that exchange happen easily, safely, and beneficially for both sides.
Information, goods, services, currency. Got it. So how do you actually design a platform to make that core interaction work well?
Well, the design has to start with a crystal clear understanding of that core interaction. And there are three essential pieces you have to nail. The participants, who are the producers, who are the consumers. The value unit, what exactly is being exchanged? And the filter, how do you connect the right value units to the right participants at the right time?
Participants, value unit, filter. Okay. Can you give us an example?
Sure, think about Facebook. The participants, all of us users, businesses, groups, etc. The value unit, it's the posts, the photos, the videos, the links, the comments, all that content being shared.
The stuff we see and interact with.
Right. And the filter, that's the newsfeed algorithm. It decides which of those billions of value units actually show up in your feed, based on your connections, your past behavior, what Facebook thinks you'll engage with.
Gotcha. So the platform isn't passive, it's actively sorting and presenting things through that filter. The document also mentioned an interesting example from rural India, Faisal. How does that fit in?
Yeah, Faisal is really interesting. It connects farmers in rural India directly with buyers, like market agents, using basic mobile phones. So farmers can check real-time prices for their crops, figure out the best place to sell, negotiate better deals. Sanjeet Chaudhary, one of the authors of the document we're using, was actually involved in launching it.
Okay, so what was the key insight there?
A major challenge was figuring out the right value unit and the right delivery mechanism. They realized that even among very poor farmers, basic mobile phone ownership was surprisingly common. So the key value unit became real-time market prices, super valuable info for a farmer. And the delivery mechanism was the simple mobile phone they already had.
So find the critical piece of information, the value unit, and deliver it using the tech people already have access to.
Exactly. They even had to initially send people out to physically gather market prices and type them into the system before it could really automate. It just highlights how critical it is to understand who creates the value units, how they get onto the platform, and how you ensure their quality.
And once you have that core interaction going, how do you keep people coming back, make it sticky?
That's where feedback loops come in. A feedback loop is basically any cycle where an action creates a result that influences future actions. On a platform, it's about creating a flow of relevant value units that get users to respond, and that response then generates more value units, pulling them back in again and again.
Like I post something, people comment, I get notified, I come back to reply, that kind of thing.
Exactly. That's a simple example. Effective feedback loops are absolutely essential. They grow the network, they encourage more content or service creation, and they strengthen those network effects we talked about. It becomes self-sustaining.
Makes sense. Keep the engagement flowing. The doc also says successful platforms often evolve, adding new layers of interaction over time.
Yeah, they rarely stay static. Think about LinkedIn. It started primarily as an online resume and Rolodex, right?
Yeah.
The core interaction was sharing professional profile information.
Right, connecting with people you knew.
But then they layered things on. They added groups for discussions, then specific tools for recruiters, then advertising for businesses, and eventually a publishing platform where people could write articles. Each new layer gave users more reasons to engage, making the platform stickier and more valuable overall.
So it's like building floors onto a building, starting with a strong foundation, the core interaction. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. We talked about designing specific platforms, but the document also gets into broader principles, design and governance.
Yes, and it kicks off with a bit of a cautionary tale. Microsoft Vista. Remember Vista?
Oh boy, do I. Not fondly. Slow, clunky.
Exactly. Widespread criticism. People called it goatware. Millions refused to upgrade from Windows XP. The document suggests part of the failure was violating the end-to-end principle.
The end-to-end principle?
Basically, it's the idea that the core intelligence, the complex functions, should live at the ends of the network with the users and their applications, not necessarily in the middle, like in the operating system or the network itself. Keep the core relatively simple and let innovation happen at the edges.
So empower the users and apps. Don't try to build everything into the central system.
Kind of, yeah. Vista was seen as trying to do too much, be too controlling, integrate too many features centrally, and it just got bloated and inefficient. It hindered performance, created bottlenecks.
Okay, I see. And the contrast is Apple.
Right. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple in '97, they had the old, somewhat messy Mac OS 9, and they also had the option of using the much cleaner, more modern architecture from NXT, the company Apple acquired. Jobs chose NXT as the foundation for what became Mac OS X.
A cleaner core.
A much cleaner core, more aligned with that end-to-end idea. And that decision is widely seen as absolutely pivotal to Apple's comeback and long-term success. A lean foundation allowed for more innovation on top.
So sometimes less is more in the core system. The document then talks about modularity.
Modularity. Yeah, Baldwin and Clark define it as basically breaking down a complex system into independent chunks or modules that still work together seamlessly. You define the rules for how the modules connect the interfaces, but you keep the internal workings of each module separate.
Like building with Lego bricks. Each brick is simple, but you can build complex things.
That's a great analogy. Think about upgrading your PC. You can swap out the graphics card without redesigning the whole computer because it's modular. It allows different parts of a complex system like a platform to evolve independently, which is super valuable as things get bigger and more complicated.
Makes sense. Flexibility, easier updates. The doc also mentions this anti-design principle, iterative improvement. Sounds kind of weird.
It does sound paradoxical, right? Anti-design. But it's crucial for platforms, because while you need good initial design, you simply cannot predict every single way users will end up using your platform. Remember, most of the activity, most of the value is created by the users, not the platform owner.
So you can't perfectly design it up front because you don't know exactly what people will do with it.
Exactly. So iterative improvement means you launch something, you watch closely how people actually use it, and then you adapt and refine the platform based on that real-world behavior. You let the users guide the evolution to some extent.
So be responsive, learn from usage, don't just stick rigidly to the original plan.
Precisely. Think about Uber again. They exploded by offering a simple core service, easy rides, that tapped into a huge unmet need for both riders and drivers. They bypassed all the costs and rules of traditional taxis. Platforms excel at this kind of value reconfiguration, finding new ways to connect supply and demand, like Wikipedia using volunteers for an encyclopedia, or YouTube letting anyone be a broadcaster.
And a big part of enabling these new connections, especially in the sharing economy, is building trust, right?
Absolutely essential. Think about it. Letting a stranger sleep in your house, getting in a car with someone you just met via an app, that requires a huge leap of faith.
Yeah, wouldn't have happened easily before platforms.
Right. Platforms build that trust through things like rating systems, verified IDs, secure payments, maybe insurance. These mechanisms make these new kinds of interactions feel safe enough to actually happen. The document makes an interesting point. It's not always disintermediation, getting rid of middlemen. Sometimes it's re-intermediation.
Re-intermediation, so new middlemen pop up.
Kind of, but they're different. They're platform-based middlemen that use algorithms, data, social feedback, not manual processes. They're much more scalable, much more efficient at making connections and building trust across a huge network than the old-school intermediaries they might replace.
So the platform itself becomes the new, more efficient intermediary. And even traditional companies are trying to get in on this, like Nike.
Yeah, the Nike Fuel Band and their fitness apps. On the surface, it looks like just selling products and add-ons. But it's really a move towards creating a platform, an ecosystem around fitness, connecting users, data, maybe even trainers down the line. Same with big industrial companies like GE or Siemens connecting their machines, creating platforms for data exchange and predictive maintenance.
It feels like almost any business could try to become a platform. Is there a simple test?
The document suggests asking, can your company add significant value to what it already sells by leveraging either information or community? If the answer is yes, then there's likely potential to build a platform around it.
Information or community. Okay, that's a useful framework. So we understand what makes them tick, but actually launching one, that seems tough. Especially that chicken or egg problem.
Ah, yes, the classic conundrum. You need producers to attract consumers, but you need consumers to attract producers.
How do you start?
Exactly. How do you start?
Well, the document shares the story of PayPal's launch strategy. It was aggressive and expensive.
What did they do? They literally paid people to sign up, gave new customers $10, and they gave existing customers $10 for every friend they referred who signed up.
No, $20 acquisition cost per user, basically. That sounds like burning cash.
Oh, they were burning through millions.
Okay.
But
yeah,
it worked incredibly well. It kickstarted those network effects super fast. People signed up for the free money, experienced how easy PayPal was for online payments, and then started demanding that online sellers accept it.
Ah, so user demand pulled the sellers onto the platform.
Exactly. Created this powerful pull.
Yeah.
eBay even tried to launch a competitor, BillPoint. But PayPal had already built such strong momentum through that initial expensive push, they'd captured the network.
So sometimes you just got to spend big early on to ignite the network.
Sometimes that's what it takes. But it's not the only way. The document points out YouTube took a different path.
Right, what was their focus?
Content creators. From day one, they focused on making it incredibly easy for people to upload and share videos. They ran contests, promoted early creators, and crucially, they made it simple to embed YouTube videos elsewhere, especially on MySpace, which was huge back then.
So they leveraged an existing network, MySpace, to get distribution for their creators' content.
Exactly. By making it easy for creators to reach an audience, they attracted creators, and the content those creators made attracted viewers to YouTube. A different way to solve the chicken or egg problem.
Focus on the supply side first, in their case. The document actually lists like 8 different strategies for this.
Yeah, it's a whole toolkit. There's building on an existing business like OpenTable, initially selling booking software to restaurants, then launching the consumer site. There's this single-site strategy, create value for one group first, hoping the other follows. Producer evangelism, actively recruiting producers who bring their customers. And the micro-market strategies start super small and focused, like Facebook just targeting Harvard initially.
Right, conquer a small pond first before trying to boil the ocean. Makes sense. And what about going viral? What are the key ingredients there?
Viral growth usually needs 4 things. A sender, the existing user. A value unit, the thing being shared can be content, an invite, a result. An external network, like email, social media. And a recipient, the potential new user. You need to design it so senders want to share the value unit through their networks to recipients, making it easy and maybe even rewarding for them to do so.
So make sharing easy and valuable. Okay, platform launched. Getting users. Now the big question. Making money. How do platforms actually monetize?
Yeah, the crucial step. But the document stresses something important first. Understand how you create value before you think about capturing it. Don't just slap ads on everything without a clear user benefit. The AdWorld example warns against that.
Right. Value first. So what are the common ways?
Charging transaction fees is a big one. eBay takes a cut. Uber takes a cut. The platform facilitates the transaction, so it takes a piece.
Seems fair, right? Yeah, aligns incentives. You make money when your users make money or get value.
Then there's charging for enhanced access or features. Zents tried charging event organizers for better listings, but apparently it didn't work so well. Maybe the value wasn't clear enough. Yelp, though, seems to do okay with its premium business listings. But you have to be careful.
How so?
Alienating users. Meetup changed its pricing model once and faced a huge backlash from its organizers. You can't just suddenly charge for something people were getting for free or dramatically change the terms without expecting pushback.
Good point. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. What else?
Charging for access to a specific community, like Dribbble for designers or Sitter City connecting parents and sitters. People pay to get into that curated network. Subscription models are common too. Pay a monthly or annual fee, like Skillshare for online courses.
Right, recurring revenue.
And then there's charging one side while subsidizing the other. Think dating sites often making it free or cheap for women to attract more paying men. Or even old school examples like bars having ladies' nights. Make one side cheap or free to build liquidity for the side you can charge.
Lots of options, but it sounds like the key is really understanding who values what on your platform and gently capturing some of that value without messing up the core interactions or network effects. Now, another big strategic choice. Openness. How open should a platform be?
That is a huge, fundamental question with massive consequences. Look at Facebook early on. Pretty closed system, right? They controlled everything.
Yeah, walled garden initially.
But then they launched Facebook Platform, opened up APIs, let third-party developers build apps on Facebook that caused an explosion of games, tools, integrations. Remember Farmville?
Oh God, Farmville, yes.
That openness, letting others innovate on their platform, was arguably key to them pulling away from MySpace, which stayed much more closed.
So opening up can fuel massive growth and innovation. But are there different ways to structure this?
Definitely. The document lists a few models. Proprietary. One company owns and controls everything. Licensing. One company owns the tech, others build on it. Joint ventures. Multiple companies cooperate. Shared. Totally open. Multiple sponsors, like Linux.
And those old format wars, VHS versus beta, Blu-ray versus HD, DVD, they show the risks of being too proprietary, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sony tried to keep Betamax totally proprietary, even though it might have been technically better. VHS is more open, licensed more widely, and it won. Even when Sony won with Blu-ray later, did they make huge profits just from the format itself? Probably not as much as they hoped. It's a trade-off.
Right. Control versus adoption, like Apple's iOS versus Google's Android today.
Perfect example. Apple keeps iOS pretty tightly controlled. Google is much more open with Android, letting lots of manufacturers use it. Result? Android has way more market share globally, but Apple captures a huge amount of the profit in the ecosystem. Different strategies, different outcomes.
What about opening out? Is that different?
Yeah, that's more about established platforms making their data or content available externally via APIs. Like the Guardian newspaper letting other sites use their headlines or articles. It extends their reach.
Okay. But can you be too open? The document mentioned Wikipedia controversies.
Right. Complete unrestricted openness has risks. Wikipedia's goal was noble, but they've had issues with accuracy, vandalism, biased editing, precisely because it was so open initially. It highlights the need for some level of curation or governance, even in open systems.
So curation is essential. How does that work?
It varies. Could be user-driven, like Reddit's upvoting and community moderation. Could be platform-managed, like Apple's App Store review process. Often it's a mix, but some mechanism is usually needed to maintain quality and trust. Even Google, with Open Android, exerts control through the licensing rules for accessing the Google Play Store.
Right. There are still rules. And bad governance can kill a platform. The Keurig example.
Oh yeah, Keurig Green Mountain made some big mistakes trying to lock down their K-Cup system, excluding popular coffee brands using DRM. It backfired, alienated consumers and suppliers. Shows how crucial good ecosystem governance is. You have to nurture your partners, not just try to extract maximum value from them.
It really does sound like running a small economy, managing all these different interests. The document even compares it to governing a country, like Singapore.
It's a useful analogy. Good governance fosters growth and stability. Bad governance leads to problems. Platforms face market failures too, like information asymmetry, where one side knows more than the other. Think buying a used car.
Right. Seller knows the problems, buyer doesn't.
Exactly. So platform governance needs to address these things. The doc mentions Alvin Roth's ideas for marketplaces. Ensure safety, achieve thickness, enough participants, reduce congestion, discourage bad behavior, and Lawrence Lessing's tools, laws, platform rules, norms, community standards, architecture, how the platform is built, and markets, incentives.
Fascinating. Like a digital social contract.
Yeah.
And it even mentions blockchain and smart contracts for governance.
Yeah, that's looking ahead. Decentralized governance, where rules are embedded in code, self-executing contracts. Still early days for most platforms, but the potential is there. Plus things like using social currencies points, reputation scores to incentivize good behavior, like on iStock Photo or SAP's developer network.
So many levers to pull. Transparency seems key too. Bezos' mandate at Amazon.
Right, the famous mandate forcing internal teams to communicate via APIs, essentially treating each other like external partners. That kind of internal transparency and modularity was apparently crucial for developing things like AWS, and giving partners a real voice, like Intel did when developing the USB standard collaboratively, also built a stronger ecosystem.
This is incredibly complex to manage. How do platform owners even know if they're doing a good job? What metrics matter?
That's a huge challenge. Traditional metrics revenue, profit aren't enough. The document highlights platform-specific ones. Liquidity. How easily can producers and consumers find each other and transact? Matching quality, are the matches good ones? Do they satisfy needs? Trust. Do users feel safe interacting?
So it's about the health of the interactions, not just the bottom line.
Exactly. And the key metrics can change. Early on, maybe it's just user growth. Later, it might be balancing the producer-to-consumer ratio. Remember Occupid managing the male-female ratio? That was crucial for them.
Right, keeping the marketplace balanced.
Haier, the appliance maker, even uses a metric called user distance to measure how integrated customers are in their design and innovation process. For mature platforms, Eric raises ideas about tying metrics to specific innovation experiments become important. And sometimes, like Cisco's absorption strategy, you track successful third-party things and decide whether to build them yourselves or acquire them.
Continuous monitoring and adjustment. Now, what about competition? Is it different for platforms compared to, say, two soda companies battling it out? The doc mentioned Porter's 5 forces.
Yeah, Porter's model is great for traditional pipeline businesses analyzing supplier power, buyer power, threat of substitutes, etc. But platform competition, it's often way faster, more dynamic, hyper competition. And you have multi-homing users being active on multiple competing platforms at once.
Like having both Uber and Lyft on your phone.
Exactly. So a key competitive strategy for platforms is often trying to limit multi-homing. Lock users into your ecosystem. Make it harder or less appealing for them to use a competitor.
How do they do that?
Network effects are the biggest lock-in. If all your friends are on Facebook, it's hard to switch to a new social network. Exclusive content or features can help. Loyalty programs, making data hard to export. Alibaba's early strategy, forcing employees to list tons of items, was all about rapidly building those network effects to create lock-in and dominate the Chinese market before competitors could gain traction.
Build the network fast to create a moat. The document also reframes the resource-based view of strategy for platforms.
Right. The traditional view is that companies compete based on owning valuable, rare resources. For platforms, the document suggests it's less about owning everything and more about controlling access to the most crucial interactions or data within the ecosystem. Think Google controlling search or Facebook controlling the social graph. That's the key resource.
Control the core interaction point. And sometimes partners become competitors. Zynga, Instagram.
Oh yeah, classic platform dilemma. Companies build huge businesses on your platform, then they get big enough to potentially compete with you or get acquired by a competitor. Platforms often respond by either acquiring them, like Facebook bought Instagram, or sometimes cutting off their access if they become too much of a threat.
And the data platforms collect gives them a huge edge, right?
Massive barrier to entry. The sheer volume of data platforms like Google, Amazon, or Facebook have about user behavior is incredibly hard for a newcomer to replicate. It fuels better algorithms, better targeting, better user experiences, reinforcing their dominance. It even helps them value acquisitions better because they can often see how well a potential target is already performing within their own ecosystem.
Wow, okay. The document even speculates about future evolutions. Uber becoming an ad platform, energy grids as platforms.
Yeah, lots of possibilities.
Yeah.
Uber knows where people go. That's valuable data for advertisers. The energy grid is shifting from one-way delivery to a multi-directional network with solar panels, batteries, electric cars that needs a platform to manage it. And the doc makes the really neat point that money itself is arguably the oldest platform, a shared protocol for facilitating exchange.
Money as a platform. Mind-blowing. Okay, so these platforms are incredibly powerful, reshaping economies. What about regulation? Is government keeping up?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? The document notes a trend over recent decades towards maybe privatizing some regulatory functions, industry self-regulation. But it strongly argues government still has a critical role.
Why? What specific areas?
Addressing negative externalities, side effects the platform doesn't pay for. Take Airbnb's impact on local housing costs or neighborhood character, preventing predatory pricing, using network effects to drive out competitors by selling below cost, then jacking up prices later. Data security and ownership, huge issue. FTC inquiries, Europe's GDPR, anti-discrimination, ensuring algorithms aren't biased, and labor regulation are gig workers, employees, or contractors. Big, thorny issues.
Yeah, these are major societal challenges, not just business problems. The doc mentions Regulation 2.0. What's that about?
It's the idea of moving beyond just writing fixed rules. Instead, using data and transparency as regulatory tools. Mandating platforms share certain data, anonymized of course, to allow oversight, track impacts, and ensure fairness. The goal is still trust and safety, but using more dynamic, data-driven methods.
Smarter regulation tailored to the platform world. Any advice for regulators in the doc?
Yeah, focus on industries with big information imbalances where platforms can either fix or exploit them. Think used cars again. Carfax helps fix the asymmetry. Regulators need to understand platform dynamics, network effects, tipping points, and not just apply old industrial era rules that might not fit.
Got it. Understand the beast before you try to tame it. Okay. Final stretch, looking ahead, where else are platforms going to make a big splash?
Education is a big one. Duolingo for languages, Minerva Project Reimagining University. Lots happening there. Healthcare has enormous potential integrating data from wearables, health records, but huge privacy and data sharing hurdles remain.
Yeah, healthcare data is sensitive stuff.
The energy grid, as we mentioned, becoming a two-way platform. Finance keeps getting disrupted by peer-to-peer lending. Robo-advisors. Labor markets are changing with gig work platforms like Mechanical Turk. Even governments are experimenting. San Francisco's open data portal is a kind of government as a platform move. And the Internet of Things. That's potentially a massive platform of platforms connecting billions of devices.
It really does feel like almost everything is becoming platformized, or could be. Does the doc give any hints about what's less likely to change quickly?
Yeah, it suggests industries that are heavily regulated already, where failure costs are extremely high, like maybe aerospace, or ones that rely massively on scarce physical resources might be slower to transform. But the general trend seems clear. More information-intensive, fragmented industries with inefficient gatekeepers are prime targets.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. This deep dive has been, well, deep. We've really covered the waterfront on platform business models. Their disruptive power is undeniable.
Absolutely. We've hit network effects, the need for careful curation and governance, all the different ways they launch and make money, the regulatory challenges.
And just how fundamentally they're changing industries across the board. It's clear they're way more than just tech. They're changing how we connect, how we create, how we treat value.
It's a fundamental economic and social shift, really.
So for everyone listening, here's a final thought to chew on. Thinking about everything we've discussed, what industry out there do you think is most overdue for a major platform disruption? Or, maybe, flip side, what's the biggest ethical challenge we need to grapple with as these platforms become even more powerful and embedded in our lives? Definitely something to think about.
Good questions to ponder.
Indeed. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope these insights are useful, and we look forward to exploring more fascinating topics with you next time.